Pay attention, keep up, because I'm going to go kind of fast. It's a story. I was leaving the restaurant last night after not receiving my food on time. The food came out several times. It wasn't right. The owner, I'm real good friends with him, Paul at Jimmy's Tequila. Paul was mad at the cooks because the cook from Chicago wasn't there. And so they had to keep bringing the food out so many different times. And it took like an hour and I got sleepy. But after the food came out, it was wonderful, great. They put the garlic butter sauce on there. But as I was leaving the parking lot, there was a short Mexican man about to cross the parking lot. He was coming from like Pine Valley, this like a trailer park. And he wanted to see which one of us going to go first. So I honked the horn. I said, you go ahead. But as I noticed, it wasn't a small Mexican man. It was a small white boy. And I stopped the car. I said, hey, what are you doing out here this late at night? And he started crying. I said, yo, what are you crying for? He said, I run away. I said, you ran away? What you mean you ran away? I leave because my father, he's too mean. So I said, man, Lord, how am I going to do with this? I said, you go over there, because somebody was in the back of me honking. Bah, bah, bah. I said, stand over there. I'm pulling up. And I pulled up. And then I said, Lord, how am I going to deal with this? So I immediately called Dashawn, because he worked with kids in group home. And I said, Dashawn, talk to this young boy because he done ran away. But I heard the Lord saying, you're going to have to deal with it. So I was like, Lord, what do I do? Now, before I called Dashawn, I said, do I call 911? Do I call the police? What do I do? So I called Dashawn and let him talk to him. And Dashawn was saying, well, if your father was mean to you, why did he get on you? He said, because I didn't want to clean my room. And then me and Dashawn talked to him for a while, and he was asking questions. Then I started talking to him about prison, and I said, well, Dashawn, let me call you back. I said, what's your mom and dad phone number? I said, here, take my phone. He said, I could tell he had some type of problem, and he called him. And I said, Miss such and such is, this is Pastor Timothy Street. I'm here standing with your son. He's all the way over here in Burlington, North Carolina. He had walked from like another little town. And she said, we've been looking for him everywhere. And he didn't have on no shoes. And I said, well, I'm right here in the Domino's parking lot. I'm going to stay with him till you get here. And she was like, thank you so much. So we waited, and I was still talking to him about me being in prison. He sit down on the sidewalk. I was in the car. So a Harley Davidson pulled up. The police pull up, and then another like SUV pull up, and they got out. The police come over there talking to him. He's like, hey, such and such, you ready to go back home? He said, I don't want to go back home. He said, I'm not going back with him. And he was pointing at his dad, and so me and his dad was sidebarring while the police was talking to him. And I told his dad how I'd been in prison, and I was sitting there talking to him and stuff like that. And then his mom was like, such and such, we want you to come on home. You ready to come back home with us? I ain't going home. I don't want to go home. I want to go to the hospital. So I knew he had some type of problem. So I seen the way they kept talking to him, and in my mind, I said, this parenting style they're using is not going to work. I said, Miss such and such, do you mind if I talk to him? She said, go ahead. I said, such and such, you know, before your parents got here, what did I tell you I just came from? He said, prison. I said, and they're trying to get you to come back home. I got a question for you. How many nights have you went to sleep with no food? He said, I always have food. I said, well, you got a roof over your head. You got food you always have. You got two good parents, and you got shoes. You just ain't got them on. You do got shoes, right? He said, yeah. I said, so do you know how many men are still in prison with 20 or 30 years and they just wish they could go home, and you can go home and you don't want to go home? Do you understand this? Where did I just come from? He said, prison. I said, do you know how many people that's homeless, they standing out there with signs, and you got food to eat and stuff like that, and you still don't want to go home? Do you understand this? I said, see, my disobedience at first came from the home, me not listening to my mom or my dad. I said, then my disobedience, it grew from there. Then I thought I didn't have to listen to people like Mr. Hardy. He was a Hart River police officer, and I pointed at him. I said, then after not listening to the authorities, I said, hey, and I felt I could do anything, and that landed me. Where did I just come from? He said, prison. I said, so tonight we're about to go home. You're about to go home, right? He said, yeah, I'm going home. I said, okay, good job. I clapped for him. Then I said, give me a high five. He gave me a high five. And I said, I'll see you again, maybe one day. And his parents was like, thank you. So remember, God is even involved even in the smallest matters. When my food didn't come on time, God withheld the food because it was a process of time, a cycle or order, God's appointed time. God didn't let the food come out. And I didn't get mad. It's like I was understanding. I was like, well, because the dude came to check on me. He said, man, what's going on at the bar? I said, it's a bad experience, but I've had so many great experiences here at this restaurant. This one bad experience don't override that. I wasn't irate like people get irate, but I didn't know God was behind the scenes doing something. So even in the smallest matters, God might be just doing something. There was a process of time that God had appointed to when I leave that restaurant, that I come in contact with this young man, because he could have been abducted or even might have even been killed. God bless y'all.